Welcome to the podcast. It starts with you, with me, Vic O'Farrell. I ask my guests, by understanding their own behaviours and personality style, what impact on their lives, both personally and professionally, has there been? What is it like to live and work with someone of your style? I mean, this is not about labelling people, putting people in boxes, or an excuse for bad behaviour. It's about recognising, understanding and respecting that we're all different. And what impact can you have on others by looking in the mirror? Because it starts with you. So another exciting episode ahead. We haven't even recorded yet, but I know it's going to be great. Thank you for joining me. I'm Vic O'Farrell, the Queen of Behaviours, and my guest today is Rob May. Rob, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, though, rather than me.
Hi, Vic. So it's a pleasure to be here. I'm Rob May. I'm the founder and the executive chair at Ramsack, and I'm a technologist, and I speak about all things technology, cybersecurity, and at the moment, just loads and loads of ideas and thought leadership and speaking around AI and what that can do for us.
Amazing. So to me, if I heard the word, cybersecurity, first of all, I'd be thinking, oh, that's dull and over my head because I'm not. But actually, I've learnt so much from knowing you for the last couple of years as we have on the speaker circuit. I just find it fascinating now. So in terms of personality, I mean, we will get on to AI and personality, but in terms of your personality, how do you describe yourself?
I would describe myself as very red.
Very red.
Yes, I'm very much a a big D on disc, and yeah, it took me a while to understand this, but yes, yeah, I think with so many people when they do disc and they start to understand themselves and understand the people that they work with, it's so empowering.
Mm. So when did you start using it in the business?
A long time ago, actually, about 20 years ago.
Wow.
And I remember going on this course. My co-founder um, is very, very blue. And at the beginning, at the early stages of Ramsack, it was just her and I running the business. And we just communicate differently. And the thing that I always remind people of is DISC is about communication needs and communication preferences.
Mm-hmm.
And our needs and our preferences are polar opposite. And until we had that understanding, and I did an initial course and then I came back and spoke to her about it, I mean, this is why we get stuck. And yeah, absolutely transformational.
So in terms of red and blue, what does that mean? So for the people that are listening that are thinking, oh, what does that mean? What do you need and what did she need?
So what that means, I tend to, well, there's two things. I speak to think is one aspect to it, whereas Sally is a blue as a C on the disc profile. Sally has to think to think. She has to take time and to process. But the other thing is, if you want me to make a decision, what I want is highlighted bullet points, and I'll give you a gut feeling response, and I'll go, that's the answer. Whereas if she needs to make a decision, she needs lots and lots of detail and lots of facts and lots of evidence. And what used to play out is I would have an idea, be really excited about it, go bouncing into her office like Tigger, going blah la 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 and brain dump in terms of this is what I think we should do. And she would look at me like a, a rabbit in the headlights, just stunned, and we wouldn't go anywhere. Conversely, if the shoe was on the other foot and she'd got an idea and something we wanted to do, she would write a long report with all the research, and at some point she'd walk into my office and leave that in my inbox, in my in tray, and then come back a few days later and say, what did you think of my idea? And I'd go, what idea? Because that's detail and I don't really.
You hadn't even read it.
No,
It was
no. And
still in
it's,
your in tray.
yes. And it's not that I don't read detail, obviously, but it's not what I need to make a decision. And
Yeah.
it was understanding that we'd got those differences. And we use this a lot in our business. And I've got one colleague who I always sort of point to as the brilliant exemplar of how this works. And he also is very blue. And he will come to see me for a discussion because he needs a decision making on something. And he'll go, bang, 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 what do you think? And I'll give him the answer and say, that's what we should do. Brilliant. I'm happy. He's happy. Off he goes. He then sends me an email and he says, Rob, thanks for our red conversation. For my sake, here's a blue email following it up. And he gives all the stuff that he needs to get off his chest in terms of documenting where he's got to with this. But that's brilliant. And we know how each other works and
Yeah.
how we best communicate.
That's amazing. But I love the fact that he actually even says, thanks for that red conversation. Here's my
Yes.
blue email. So if you've been using it 20 years, how long has the business been going then?
33 years now.
Wow. And how many people work at Ramsack?
So we're just over 120 people.
Amazing. You
Yeah.
must be very proud of
Oh,
where you've,
absolutely. Absolutely. It's
yeah.
been an amazing journey and just continues to be super exciting. You know, the thing is what we do in the areas that we work in are constantly changing.
Mm.
So I never get bored.
No, no, not when you're talking cyber. You know, AI wasn't a thing
No.
33 years ago. Well, actually, the internet wasn't a thing 33 years. Oh, if the internet wasn't a thing, how did you set up a cyber business?
So we started as a conventional IT business. So the internet started, so the World Wide Web started the year after we started.
Oh,
And
just
so
there for
my
you.
very first email address on a business card was a CompuServe email address for those people who remember CompuServe. And you're right. I mean, cyber didn't really exist then, not as an industry.
No.
We evolved into it. Interestingly, AI did. We've had AI since the 1950s. It's just that everybody thinks it's the latest thing, and we're all talking about it. But I think there's been so many changes in AI in the last few years that's why it's in people's consciousness now. Where perhaps it, I mean, you've used AI for the last 12 years on your phone with predictive text. You know,
Mm.
that's AI, and that's all that generative AI does. It sees a word and it predicts what's going to come next, and it chains stuff together.
Mm.
But you're right in terms of what we do and what we lead on now. That didn't exist when we started the business.
No. So amazing. 33 years later and 120 employees. Let's say you must be very proud. So in terms of profiling and you did it, like you say, with your business partner Sally, I think you said her name was,
Yeah,
there 20 years ago. Is it something that's embedded as part of the Ramsack culture now?
totally, totally. So I think the understanding about communication needs, and we now do it as part of everybody's onboarding.
Hmm.
It's part of their first couple of weeks at the business, and we use it in a number of ways. So we use Microsoft software in our business. So we use Microsoft 365. In Microsoft, you have, when in your Microsoft account, you have a profile picture.
Yep.
And whenever you go to type an email to someone, if they're there in your contacts, up pops their profile picture and so on. Or if you go to do a Teams message or
Yep.
whatever. What we do is once we've gone through the profiling, we edit the Office 365 profile picture so that the background of the person's identity is their disk colors. So what that means is if I go to type an email to you, you pop up and there's your profile picture and you're bright yellow in the background. And I think, okay, what do I need? Or I'm typing an email to Sally and it pops up blue. And I think I can't do my default, 2-line red email. I need to give Sally detail.
Yeah.
So we do that. Everybody's identity pass as well. So everyone has an identity pass to get in meeting rooms and all the rest of it. which has their profile picture on it. And again, that has their disk colors in the background.
So you say they're discolored. So I'm thinking like you on LinkedIn, for example, your background is red on your picture. So that's what shows up there. So for me, I would be yellow red. So would I
Yes.
have both colors in my
Yes, you
background?
would.
So it's not just, so it does show the whole blend. And would it show the fact that my yellow is probably 60% and my red is 40%? Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you really have taken it.
Absolutely. And what that means is it keeps it front of mind for people.
Yeah.
And I think to use these tools effectively, you have to keep things front of mind. And for me, the beauty of DISC is that it is so easy to understand. And if you practice it, and remember that, look, this is communication preferences.
Yeah.
And that thing about, people say treat other people the way that you want to be treated. Well, that's not true when it comes to communication.
No.
And I always say to people, treat other people the way you want to be treated when it comes to kindness and respect. But
Yes.
when it comes to communication, you have to treat other people the way they need to be communicated with.
Yes.
And that's the gospel that we preach to all staff, in terms of, if you want to have successful communication with one another, let's appreciate and let's understand that
We're all
we have
different.
different communication needs.
So then how do you, if you're communicating with another red, you're just naturally in flow, two lines, maybe just in the subject matter, even not even in the body of the email.
Yes.
But if you're going to message someone who's like me, so very yellowy, sunshiny, outgoing, peoply, what would be the first thing you'd do?
Shall we do this in a bar?
No, not me, Vic O'Farrell, a sunshiny yellow person. No.
So, well, it's quite interesting, actually. Talking about AI, I've created an AI assistant that does a disk analysis and tells me what the profile is, because it's great within my own business because we've gone through this. But
Yeah.
I've created an AI assistant that analyzes communication and gives an interpretation of what disk profile it thinks that person is.
Oh, what, from like emails that other people send
Absolutely.
you?
Yeah.
Really?
And I've tested it on my internal staff where I know what their profile is.
Yeah.
And so I was demonstrating this recently, and I copied in an email from a colleague that everybody knows in my business is very, very blue. Why write a 1-page email when a 3-page email will do?
With an attachment with
Yeah.
500 words. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. But I copied in one of his emails, and my AI said, this person is clearly very blue on the disk profile. You might like to respond like this.
Wow.
And that's
Wow.
really good as well. And then I
That's
said to him,
powerful.
yeah, oh, really powerful. That it's really powerful. And I think, I mean, with AI, one of the things I'm talking about at the moment is that, in fact, I was talking to someone at the BBC recently, and they said to me that they found AI quite intimidating. And the thing that they didn't like was this concept of artificial intelligence. And that just seemed wrong, and it felt wrong to her. And I said, well, rather than thinking of it as artificial intelligence, think of AI as an assistive intelligence. And it's there to be an assistant. Microsoft have called all of their AIs co-pilots. They haven't called any of them autopilots. They're there to assist you with what you do. And what I'm thinking about all the time is, how can we assist in the challenges that we have in the workplace? Look, and communication is hugely
One of the
important
biggest.
to absolutely anybody. Anybody who's listening to this podcast, or watching it online or whatever you do in life, communication is so key. And so if we can get tools that can help us, cut through that, and communicate more effectively, then that's really important. The other thing that I say in the business, because I do a talk on this within the business. So we have a we have a Ramsack Academy where we do a lot of training and development, and they're not all, you know, tech subjects. And when I'm talking about this, I actually talk about the fact that actually we're all chameleons. You have your default, you have your preferences, but of course, if I was red in every single communication, then, you know, my greens and the blues and so on would just be totally alienated by what can sometimes be perceived as, you know, a controlling or an aggressive communication style. And that's the other thing, I think, you know, you on your best day can be seen very, very negatively by somebody on your opposite style. But one of the things I say is, look, we're all chameleons. I can absolutely talk green. You know, I can slow down and be, you know, calm and all about people and huggy stuff. And
Just for
I
those of you
can't
who are
really, can I?
listening,
I'm
no.
really struggling.
For those of you who are listening, come over to the YouTube channel and see Rob's face as he tries to be so green. We need 5 greens a day. It's what we're told, aren't we? You know.
Yes. Perfect.
But it's no, but it's the fact that you recognise it, because it's not about other people or your team becoming red when they want to communicate with Rob. It's about Rob understanding that actually, yes, Sally needs to give this detail, or the example that you gave earlier. Thanks for the red meeting. Now here's my blue email.
Yeah.
You know, it's actually, you respect the fact that everybody has their way to communicate with you, and you need to allow them the space to do that and to be that chameleon and do that flexing and adapting.
I think it's really useful with customers as well. I always remember a client who I got on really, really well with coming to visit the office, and it was the first time he visited the office. And I remember showing them around and introducing him to some of the support team. And afterwards they went, he was lovely, not at all what I was expecting. And I went, really? I said, he's such a nice guy. He went, no, he's really rude. And I went, no, he's not. And when I reflect on it, he was clearly very red.
Right.
And he's not rude. He's just direct and to the point.
Yeah. Yeah. But to another red, he's not.
No.
And even to a yellow and a blue, depending on how red they were, because obviously but very much to a green, which is the polar opposite to the red, is yes, that is very rude. But then you probably, how would you describe a very green person with no self-awareness?
Yeah, well, you know,
keep it clean.
Yeah, well,
this is listened
the
to.
textbook, isn't it? It's the caring and encouraging and patient and so on. I might describe them as a bit docile and bland and, you know, plodding maybe.
Sometimes a bit passive aggressive, a bit like saying yes but doing no.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's
but
again
brilliant team people, and you know.
Yeah, and sometimes I think the Greens are the best chameleons because they have that like diplomatic view of seeing everything from everyone else's viewpoint. Sometimes they're harder to go, oh, what are you? What kind of, where do you fit? But all valid, and that's the thing. And I think if you don't have that awareness, and I've been into organizations where they've not had the awareness and they're growing, and I'm thinking, yeah, but you're growing a team of you, and that is not how to grow a business. You need a blended team. We talk about diversity, don't we? You know, you need diverse personalities to challenge each other's decision making.
Oh, totally. And I think the other thing with diversity is I'm really keen that people look at diversity of thought and the fact that we think differently. And that's different backgrounds and so on. And it's not necessarily always just about the traditional forms of diversity that we think about. We need to bring together, you know, diverse thinking. We don't want everybody to be cookie cutter versions of ourselves.
No.
You know, and if everybody was blue, and there's a lot of blue in the IT industry, in terms of detail and so on. But if everyone was, then we wouldn't ever be doing the selling and the marketing and getting out there and being the face of the business, and because that's what we excel at, and we excel
Yeah.
at you know you know not necessarily the raucous party that I attribute to the yellows, Vic.
Yeah.
But I absolutely love having an audience and someone that wants to
Mm.
listen, and I can tell, I can get up on the stage and and so on.
Yeah.
You've got to have the balance. You've got to have the blend.
Yeah.
Too much of any one style or way of thinking or way of doing things is not good for anybody.
No. And I'm thinking, IT, tech, and sales very yellowy. I mean, it's typical, very yellowy. Like you say, tech typically very blue. It's just like actually the blues have got to put the fun element in it so that the yellows can go and sell it, because the people who are buying it will probably be red, or could be green, or could be something that's not blue. So they don't want that tech sale. They want that what's it going to do for me sale.
And that again, I think, sums up the importance of DISC, understanding what the communication needs are,
Mm.
because your default, until you have the awareness, your default is you communicate the way you like to be communicated with.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't work. I was doing some work again with AI recently, where at our business we have four buying personas. Typically the people that engage us are either going to be a CEO, a CTO, a CFO, or an office manager. They're the
Mm-hmm.
they're the four buying personas. And I was doing some work with AI where I took a sales proposal, and I was working with the sales team, and I said, right, let's give the sales proposal to the AI and tell it that they are an office manager, and ask what's wrong with the proposal. How could the proposal be more inclusive or more understandable? And then let's do the
Wow.
same as a CFO or a CTO. And
Oh,
the dawning realization that most salespeople have one message. They have one sales
yeah.
proposal, but dependent on who your customer is, they might want completely different things. What's important to the CTO or the CFO is completely different to what's important to the office manager.
But I love that that's what you're asking AI to do for you. And like you say, it's been around for years. In fact, I've just made a little note here. Was Clippy from Microsoft AI?
Yeah, arguably it was. Arguably, Clippy was Microsoft's first AI, which was then replaced with Cortana, and now Cortana has been replaced with Copilot. And Cortana came out at the point that, we had Alexa on Amazon and so on. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It was an assistant, and if we think of AI as an assistive intelligence, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah. I mean, it's showing my how long I haven't used Microsoft for, isn't it? If I'm referring to the last time I used it, it had a Clippy on it. I'm afraid I'm a Mac girl through and through. But don't hold that against me. So as we kind of come towards the end of this, I mean, I find the whole AI stuff fascinating now, as well as disc, obviously. So you've been in business. You set your business up 33 years ago, and you did your disc 20 years ago, which I just think is amazing. If you could go back to your younger self when you set the business up before you knew this, what advice would you give yourself
About business or
about
about,
about communication?
I think, to understand communication needs, to understand, and to me it's not just disc either. I think
No.
all of these different tools that work together to help you understand yourself. um I was reading a book earlier today, actually, and it was talking about neurodiversity and executive function. And it says your executive function doesn't mature until you're 30. And I thought, oh my goodness. So I was 21 when I started the business. I hadn't finished actually developing as an adult at that point, and I certainly didn't
Have
understand
you finished
myself
now?
well.
Sorry.
just about through puberty. Um, but I think understanding yourself, we've done lots of different types of psychometrics and so on to help us understand ourselves and each other, and all of them have a piece to play in that understanding and help you work out you. You know, Young said you need to understand the otherness of others, and I think that's really important. But you also fundamentally have to understand yourself and what you need, and in what scenarios do you thrive, and in what scenarios do you find yourself really frustrated. And often I find, especially with my kids, the things that frustrate me about my kids are typically the things that frustrate me about myself. And I think at the root of it, you see their behavior, and part of it is it's annoying, but some of it is it's annoying because you don't want them to make the same mistakes that you make.
Yeah. So I guess if you're listening to this, it doesn't matter what age you are, understand. Well, if you're listening to this, great, because you're listening to because you want to understand about different styles and communications. And I took from, I think it was your interview on Amy Rowlandson's podcast, that when you said, "What's it like to be on the receiving end of you?" I've kind of like borrowed that and made it my keynote title now.
But isn't that a great question? And I remember you saying to me that you loved that line. But I say that to people all the time. How does it feel to receive you? When you are. And I remember, again, many years ago, I did some NLP and so neuro-linguistic programming, and one of the concepts of when you've got that difficult situation, one of the exercises that we had to go through was playing through in your mind what you were going to say, and then play it through in your mind again, and this time you assume that you're the person that's receiving that message. And how does that feel? And then the third run through in your mind is you as an observer of the conversation. So you're watching you deliver what you were going to say to the other person and how they're going to respond. And just thinking about that and working it through again, you think, oh my goodness. That was probably the first time I started to think about, how does it feel to receive me? How does it feel to be on the other end of my typical communication style?
Yeah.
And of course, we temper it all the time. But then when you're under stress, or if you're hungry or tired or whatever, your true colours show, don't they?
Absolutely. When someone's cut you up in the car, I think we all go very red sometimes, don't we? Okay. So one final word from you then, Rob. What would you say to the listeners? What piece of advice would you give them?
I think to understand DISC is just amazing, but really to embrace it and to use it. And as we described right at the beginning, where I use it for everybody within Ramsack, so that's how they communicate. That's super powerful, both internally and externally. Yeah. So yes, I highly commend that.
You've made it part of your culture, which
yes.
is, and for me sitting on this side as to what I do. By the way, listeners, Rob is not a client of mine. We're just speaker buddies. He does use someone else. There are lots of people out there doing this kind of stuff, but it's more the fact that actually I love when we first met and you said it's part of what we do. It's just music to my ears. So if people wanted to get a hold of you, find out more about, not so much DISC, because obviously that's me, but more about what Ramsack does and all this AI stuff, what's the best way to get a hold of Rob May?
So one of two ways. So ramsack.com, that's RAMSAC. That's the corporate website. My speaker website is thoughtprovoked.co.uk. So either of those get to me.
Wonderful. And we should put all of those in the show notes too. So thank you, Rob, for joining me on It Starts With You.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Take care.
You too.
How has this conversation had an impact on you? What have you learnt? What will you do differently? Do leave a review on Apple or Spotify on It Starts With You podcast. And also leave a comment down below. Do also then connect with me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Facebook and LinkedIn. And why not even join the Facebook group It Starts With You and keep the learning ongoing. Thank you for listening.